Welcome once again to the newest edition of 3 In, 3 Out, the most unique Seahawks recap show in the multiverse. I'm your host, Clinton Bonner, and I am joined by the one, the only, the great Brandan Schultz. And Brandan, who do we have with us today as a special guest? Who is it, Brandan?
Tell we have a special guest. It is at C Mike Spin Move out on X. He is Griff, as you can see his name on the screen. Griff, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you guys for having me on. This will be fun. I'm excited to chat some Seahawks because I think it kind of slants toward the positive a little bit for the first time in some weeks. So, yeah.
Love that.
We need some positivity because I don't know if you know this, but the last game we played, it did not end positively.
It did not end positively, no. And then that's always the difficult part, trying to separate process from result. Not that I'm great at that, but at least from a relative sense, the process in this game felt a little bit better to me than the process, if you will, of the previous games. I can only hope that it's trending toward better results, at least. So.
Yeah, we think it might, and we do have Griffin Sturgeon, right, with the Seattle Overload podcast. You know him with Matty F. Brown, of course. And if you don't follow that already, get out there and subscribe to Seattle Overload. Great X's and O's guys, and really my cup of tea. And that may be an inside joke for Matty there. But look, really, it's hard to go lower when we're one of our last five, and there was really it was a much different ball game and a really much better showing from our defense. And we're going to talk to Griff about that mainly today. But first, guys, I do want to share a small story with y'all. So Brandan, actually, you both know that I was down in Florida, just off Siesta Key, which just got walloped by the hurricanes, but it's in pretty good order. So down there with some buddies, and they go to this awesome bar called MVP. It's right on the main strip in Siesta Key, which is like 45 minutes south of Tampa. Awesome vibe. Place is packed. It's just great NFL scene. Just wonderful day. Great pub food. It's like 86 degrees with a breeze coming through the whole place. I realized at the end of overtime, guys, that last year, when I was in the same exact bar, we lost to the Rams in overtime in the same bar I was in 2 years in a row. That was the Myers miss. And then the Rams get the W, or it was like the Myers miss at the very end of the game, and it would have forced overtime, whatever that was. But either way, 2 last-second losses to the Rams at the same bar. So, Griff, you're new here. Am I allowed back in that bar? How does this work?
Hey, if it were up to me, you're allowed back. I think what is it? Law of averages. These things will correct over time. So that's my superstition that it'll turn around at any moment. So
I think I'm with Amy in the chat. Never again. Any other game except for the Rams is okay until you get a win, and then still never against the Rams.
Okay. All right. That feels fair-ish. So, all right, I'll report back in. I will be back down there actually for Thanksgiving, and it just happened to have 2 trips in November. So I'll be back there. I don't think we're playing the Rams in the next couple of weeks, but I'll let everybody know how we do. And we are going to talk about, we're going to get into this with Griff in a bit, and we're going to talk about what was different. It's going to be a different 3 in, 3 out. Griff, if you don't know, typically what Brandan and I do as a recap show is we look at 3 of the positives from the game and then 3 of the negatives from the game, but really kind of smaller moments, like micro moments, that plays within plays, and not the biggest plays everybody's talking about, not the touchdowns, not the strip sacks, but kind of the more run-of-the-mill plays, but that stuck out to Brandan and I. And we've been doing this for a number of years, and it's a ton of fun. And Brandan, we got something that someone's been doing for a number of years. Give him a shout out.
Yes, we've got our live executive producer in the chat. He is our Ryan911 with the $9.99 super chat. We're back. Go Hawks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you every single time. You're the best, dude. So it's not going to be a traditional 3 in, 3 out. So we're going to break it down differently. And we really wanted to focus on that run game. Hey, Brandan, before we get on with the show, we have an excellent offer from our partner, MyBookie. And look, I think you're going to want to tell the entire flock about this because, hey, a good deal is a good deal.
It is a good deal. If you head on over to mybookie.ag, you want to use the promo code HAWKRA, HAWKRA, because you're going to get a 100% deposit match. And Clinton, I know with our PNW Prop Stars show, we're probably not going to get any bets here with Griff, but I do know that you had some solid bets lined up for the Rams. Maybe you have some bets lined up for against our opponents, since I don't know, you seem to be such a Rams fan going into this weekend. Maybe Monday Night Football, you have a bet that you want to use that 100% deposit match on going up against Tua Tagovailoa.
You know what? For a bye week, I like to throw a couple of chips on the roulette table there. So why not already? So with a 100% match from MyBookie, that does sound like a good deal. Relaxing Sunday, couple of bet against our rivals, then Monday night, just root against the Rams. Brandon, I could get into that.
Head on over mybookie.ag, promo code HOKRA.
Griff, one of the things that I remember listening to you and Maddie in the offseason when Macdonald was being courted, and then when Macdonald was hired, you were one of the only voices out there with Maddie saying, hey, look, from a defensive perspective, the second half of the Ravens year on a run D perspective, it actually wasn't all that good, and it actually was not good. And I'd love for you to give a recap on what did you see last year in the last half of the Ravens, and just so folks have a kind of a baseline to go from.
Sure. Well, so like you said, the second half of 2023, the Ravens run defense did tank. It was almost as bad, sneakily, almost as bad as the Seahawks run defense last year. In fact, they had a very similar arc. Really good run defense first half of the year, fell off the face of the earth the second half of the year. In the Ravens' case, it didn't really matter in the aggregate because their pass defense was still so good it could accommodate that and carry that. But so, yeah, it begs the question, why? Well, why did they regress? What really happened? And I think it's a combination of a variety of things. One of them is that I think and this isn't unique to Macdonald or the Ravens, it's simply kind of a universal football truth. It's really hard to defend the run with two high safeties. And that can't be taken for granted. There's rightfully a general notion of the pass game is more important than the run game. And, if you overemphasize the run game, let's old school, you got to get rid of that mentality. And that is certainly true to a point. I'm a subscriber of that notion, but again, only to a point. There are realities where getting run on can be more dangerous than entire portions of some team's passing game. So in the Ravens case, I mean, it was more efficient for offenses to run on them than to say run your average quick game play call like stick or slants or something like that. And it's just, the run game can compete with elements of the passing game efficiency wise if you don't spend time trying to defend it. So I think that's part of it. So over the course of 17 games, if you spend that much time at too high as the Ravens did, it can get you. And the previous year as well, the first half, their run defense wasn't great in 2022. Mike's first year, second half, it was really, really good. So 2 seasons as a DC in the NFL, Mike has not been able to put together above average run defense for both phases of a season, if you will. So part of that is just too high is tough. I mean, we can't take it for granted. The Fangio guys have the same problem. Carroll's had the same problem trying to bridge his Carroll stuff with Fangio stuff and kind of figuring it out for a period and then not. So there's that side of it. The second element of it is if you isolate where the Ravens in particular were struggling, like what types of runs, were they just bad at everything, or was it this category or that category? They particularly seem to have issues with like gap scheme runs. So like classic power or counter, maybe the occasional like trap run or bash, things of that nature. But they simply were just giving up a multitude of explosives. So they'd be, handle your regular outside zone, inside zone stuff, the occasional duo run, bottle those up inside 5 yards per carry most games. But then if you just look at their counter sample for that game, they give up 3 carries for 60 yards. And it's like, okay, that's where the efficiency spike is. And that's because when you live in those fronts, and especially when you're down a player in the box, you've simply got less guys on the front side of the play. And those gap scheme runs, when you get pullers, they can get guys out on the perimeter on you. And if you can't match numbers on the front side of the play, then you're screwed. It doesn't matter how good your players are. It simply becomes a matter of arithmetic and geometry, and then you're on the wrong side of it. So the answer or the response for any coaching staff when you're faced with that is, how do I want to alleviate the weak spots in my core structures? Any play call is going to have a weak spot to it. You can't avoid that. It's how you pivot off of it with supplementary calls or maybe little technique tweaks and stuff. And Mike has those, but his solution is to live in a technique tweak solution world with that. And that, in Seattle's case, can only go so far. In my mind, like kind of a catch-all solution is to just move the front. So slant the line, everybody gain a gap. If the play is to the right, everyone just, if you're a B gap player, now you're the A gap player on the backside. If you're the front side B gap player, now you're the C gap player. Everybody gain a gap, and that's just how you get numbers on the other side on the front side of the play. So it kind of comes down to stuff like that. So really, it was just like, yeah, there are weak spots, and you have to be willing to invest the time and the scheme and all that and the practice time to try and to alleviate them. Some coaches will just sit in their stuff and just let it happen to them in service of a larger project. That's kind of what he did last year. This year it's been a little more complex, but they might finally be finding their answer in Seattle at least.
Yeah, I think, and we will definitely get to what we saw in the Rams game there. And then, but Brandan, as Griffin's is talking about, well, sometimes you could just sit back and kind of allow it to happen to you as a part of a choice. I feel like the last 3 years, though, no matter how we've sliced this, the net results have been very similar, but maybe we're getting there in different ways. Are there things you want to, poke at Griff at when he's going on about the details and nuances there?
Well, I think he hit on it exactly, that you, to a point, you can't allow it to continue to happen to you. Like at some point you can't go too high because you're getting beat so badly that you must at least stop getting beat that way and then make the offense make a different choice, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's tactics versus strategy, right? So sometimes you can have good tactics at solving this issue over here, but is it worth it in the aggregate? Or like you said, the net results? Sometimes not. And I was wondering, as we were watching this season unfold, my question was, at what point does Mike say, this is untenable now? My core structures can't provide the answers. And like the built-in answers that are typically supposed to help with this stuff. At what point does he say, I either need to change the fundamentals of my defense, or I need to start introducing or drastically increasing the frequency of those quote unquote supplementary calls or supplementary scheme tweaks within his stuff? He was doing a little bit of those so-called scheme tweaks, supplementary stuff within his structure, but it still wasn't working. So then my question was, is he going to change the fundamentals of his base day one calls? And that's typically an area where coaches don't go, especially mid-season, because you're basically saying, hey, the stuff I grew up on when I was a football baby, that Wink Martindale and Dean Pease was teaching me in Baltimore 10 years ago, you're saying I need to change that? Like, I'm not doing that. To his credit, he flipped on a dime and frankly instituted defense that he's barely spent time coaching against the Rams this past week. And I was shocked. I did not think he would take the route that he did. But it was, I mean, credit to him. And then also, like, he can coach the hell out of it, as shown. It's like an elected choice he made to make some of these schematic pivot points. And I mean, the execution of not just the players, but the coaches coaching it, which is like that other hidden element of their scheme players, but then coaching the scheme too, so that your good ideas don't manifest into anything. So yeah, it was, but to wrap it up, like you said, like there's that balance between tactics and strategy. And I guess it took 8 weeks, but they're here now and hopefully it stays. But also a rookie head coach, right? It's just, no matter how great of a coach you are, it's your first year on a new job. Anything can happen. So,
well, that's certainly super interesting too. And I definitely want to get into some of the details about, okay, schematically, okay, then there was a sea change, as unexpected as it was from your perspective. And that makes sense to me too. It's like, okay, does a tiger change its stripes type thing? And after a half a season, for him to change on a dime, there's a couple parts there for me. Like, okay, what were the schematic changes? And then what's the probability of making the shift? But then you mentioned also like coaching it up well within a week. That just seems like super low probability. So how did we end up with such a positive outcome where, Kyron only gets 69 yards, he's 3 point something per carry, 14 yards in the first half. So let's, I guess, first go into the schematic change itself, Griff. So
Sure.
is it out of too high? Is it like what actually changes up front from a gap perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's such like a loaded topic question, right? Like run defense, because that can mean so many things. I think it makes sense to break it down into one high defense and the issues there, and then two high defense and the issues there. So starting with one high, the premise of one high is that it's supposed to be easy, especially if you've got good, because you can defend the run out of one high with undrafted free agents if you want in the NFL, if you coach it well, which we've seen in Seattle in the past. But when you've got, in my opinion, and I think it's shared by most, an embarrassment of riches at D-line, and you still can't stuff the run in one high, like, what is going on? Also, I believe Mike Macdonald's a good coach. I believe the players are good. So how do I reconcile those two beliefs with bad results? Like, what's going on here? And I mean, ultimately, like, I think there's a little bit of like new staff and those guys trying to find their mark with each other. The subjective stuff, the human element, all these new guys on the job, that's probably a variable here. But within the one high stuff, speaking plainly with scheme, how they align the second level, essentially. So if one high, if there are 6 blockers, so 5 offensive linemen and tight end, say the tight end's in line, that's 6 guys forming 7 gaps. One high run defense, you've got 7 guys in the box. So that means it's seven defenders versus 7 gaps presented. You're quote unquote gapped out. For every gap, there's 1 defender. In theory, you just align in your gap and you go forward. And if everyone plays their gap, the ball comes to you. I mean, that is essentially distilled the theory of one high run defense. And
unless you're Jerome Baker and you just run to Tyrell Dotson's gap, and then you have problems.
And get traded.
Exactly. And it's like, so like Brandan just said, how do you get guys running to the wrong gap? Well, part of it is, yes, the players, but maybe what even precedes that is, it's as simple as the alignment. Guys are literally lined up, shifted 2 gaps away from their primary responsibility. And that's simply a choice. That's the intent of the call. And so when I go back to like Mike talking of like me pretending as though Mike is saying, what do you mean what Dean Pease and Wink Martindale told me was maybe misguided or whatever. That is to serve, like, they align that way. He knows what he's yielding. He knows he's making it slightly tougher on them. It's for coverage purposes. It's for handling motion. Like, there's all these little nitty gritty things for it, but it still makes it what should be easy a little bit more difficult. Now, to accommodate that, because he knows that's an issue, to accommodate being essentially like off kilter in your alignment collectively, to accommodate that, he has the defensive linemen play, even if they're not legitimately 2 gapping, they kind of play a quasi 2 gap. And the language Macdonald and Dirty are using is primary, secondary. You have your primary gap, which is the gap the defensive lineman aligns in, and then your secondary gap. But now that you have your defensive linemen playing really heavy to their secondary gap to accommodate a misaligned second level to kind of buy them time, you're kind of defanging Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy and Jaron Reed and even Jonathan Hankins. You're turning what should be fast scheme. If one high, one gap, everyone can go downhill. You're kind of turning it into 2 high-esque techniques up front. And then, because the second level is now reading a defensive lineman in front of them who could be in either gap, now they're playing slow, playing hesitant, waiting to see where the ball goes and which gap they need to place. Now, all of a sudden, one high, one gap defense is kind of turning into 2 gap, read what the ball carrier is doing relative to my gap. And now I need to know what gap. You're just slowing down, you're bogging down all your players. And then also you're further away from your gap as well, again, with the misalignment thing. So with one high this week, whether it was nickel or base personnel, if you were an A-gap player this week, you aligned in the A-gap. Like, it's that simple. The B-gap players lined up in the B-gap, the C-gap players, the C-gap. They weren't shifted over whatever X amount of yards for it. So it really is that simple. Now, in part, what accommodated that was he rotated the safeties a little bit differently. So part of what caused the misalignment was if you had an under front, so say the 3 technique is aligned on the opposite side of the tight end, that would be an under front. He's dropping the strong safety down to that 3 technique side. So when you have the safety and the 3 technique on the same side, that's a thing called double rotation. And if you think about that, if you imagine the side of the offensive line that only has the guard and the tackle, no tight end, you have an edge who's your C gap player, like usually in a 5 technique. You have your 3 technique player who's the B gap player. But if you have that safety on that side, the 2 gaps in front of him are covered. So what gap does he have? Well, he has the A. He must have the A gap then, but he's all the way aligned, stacking the offensive tackle. So that's called double rotation. So this week, Mike simply did not double rotate. He rotated the strong safety away from the 3 technique so that he would align to an open gap now. And then the Mike could align to an open B gap. And now the Will would align to an open A gap. And everyone was just, you stacked in like Tetris, basically. So there was that part of it. The other part that allowed him to rotate that way was he played a bare front. And instead of when he would be in base, he would use different fronts. So like his classic odd front, he'd have a 5 technique, a 0 technique, and a 5 technique. The two B gaps are open, and that serves a purpose, but it doesn't do a great job of clogging the middle. So by aligning all of his defensive linemen in a bare front, so you have 2 3 techniques and 1 0 technique, that spills the second level run fits out to the perimeter just by alignment. And so now you can rotate your safety to either side, and he's going to be an edge player as essentially. So also bare fronts are just really easy to defend the run out of. Like it's that simple. So like you get, because all 4 interior gaps are plugged by your defensive linemen, they can't combo as long. They have to come off, the offensive linemen have to come off their double or their combo block sooner. And that just allows all the interior guys to just go. And the frequency at which they were beating blocks, destroying blocks was simply higher. So it was a matter of letting his defensive linemen play faster, aligning his second level a little bit better, which then allowed them to play faster. And the faster the second level plays, the faster the first level gets to play, and vice versa. It becomes a positive feedback loop. So that was the long-winded one high answer.
Well, let me jump in there, Doug, because I do have a question, because I know that, and I know there's another part to the 2 high. And we also talked about kind of that one high hybrid-ish when you're doing 2 high tendencies. That sounds like a cluster, the way you're describing. It's like, why in the world would you do that? If you think you can, but why would you? But I've heard you and Maddie also talk about like, look, hey, even in 1 high, which is now it makes more sense for me when you're like, even in 1 high, we're not playing it like the Jets play it. We're not playing it like the 49ers play it, which I think I've heard you say before is what you said at the end there, which is get up, field, and go. Use your speed and just go straight through your gap. So like, I guess the question is that an accurate, did I capture that accurately when you were talking about the Jets and Niners of like, hey, they play it more the way you were talking at the end of that part 1. Is that right?
I would agree with you. I think those are good examples of guys that just get after it in 1 high. Yeah.
So then like from a personnel perspective, before we get to the 2 high part of your answer too, do we just, in your estimation, do we simply have the kind of talent wise that should be doing more of that? Is it just evidence in 1 game that it's simpler, it was more effective, or is it an environment of the Rams are not, they scored a lot of touchdowns through the ground. Like Kyron's got 8 touchdowns, but their yards per carry, they're not really that great of a run team this year. So is it more just that was the right opponent to do it against, or that's that our personnel is better suited to do that anyway?
Sure. I think trying to divorce what happened with how they did it, I believe that this is better structure, more sound structure, better process, that this is probably how they should try to operate from here on out. And it gives them a fighting chance, a better chance against any opponent, controlling for, whatever that strength of opponent is. So whatever, if they, face the best running team in the NFL, they'll do better doing it this way, I think, against that team than the way they have in the past, pretty much. And I think it does fit the players for sure.
Okay. That's interesting to know for sure. Okay. I know I did cut you off there, and then I think you were going to give some more detail about the 2 high, but so if you want to continue, please do.
Sure. So one I'd say for too high, the bear fronts do apply to that as well. But so previously the issues in too high have been because they choose to fit the run from too high without the nickel or one of the safeties involved. That means you're going to only be defending the run with the players you see aligned in the box. So going back to the 6 blockers forming 7 gaps thing, it's 7 gaps for 6 now. So you're down a guy. That's simply just really hard to defend the run. That's how the Tampa 2 teams did it in the 2000s. And some of the good run defending teams were able to do that because even though that was their base way of doing it, they used every excuse not to defend the run that way. That meant just like every run stunt you can think of, run blitzes, they would spin out of too high a lot into cover 3 a lot. I mean, they had every excuse not to play it their base way. And that's how some of those teams survived. A lot of Brian Urlacher's highlights you can look up on YouTube. They're not playing Tampa 2. Even Derek Brooks with the Bucks, where it's named Tampa 2. They're not playing as much Tampa 2 as you think. It's because none of them want to defend the run that way because it's really hard. So there's that part of it because when you're too high, you're tasking 3 open gaps. You're assigning 3 open gaps that don't have a defensive lineman aligned in it to 2 linebackers. So if you think about that, you can't be aggressive to one of those gaps because he'll just go to the other gap, right? I mean, it's that simple. Like, imagine if you put a pole between you, say you're playing basketball, you put a pole between you and the dribbler, say that pole could move front and back. If you aggressively defend that guy one area, he's just going to go around the pole and you're done. That's the same conundrum the linebackers have. So they have to wait, pause, track the running back, wait for him to declare to where there's the point of no return where he can't go to the other gap and then fall back into it. The problem is by the time that happens, it might be 4 or 5 yards downfield. Or if you're simply wrong and you're late, it's an explosive. And we saw, as we all know, a lot of explosives with Baker and Dotson early on. So if you want to continue to use that run fitting mentality, which that's technically called ball fitting, where you fit down a gap, you have to have a lot of line stunting. That's clearly not line stunting and like line slants and stuff. That's clearly not what Macdonald wants to do. That's just not his solution. And I thought it would be because I thought there's no way he wants to change how he coaches like the DNA of his defense to the linebackers. But lo and behold, what he ended up doing this week was if you imagine, say, a 2x2 set. So you've got your tight end and one receiver, that's 2 guys. And then there's slot formation on the other side, your slot receiver, then the outside receiver, that's 2. So 2x2. The nickel is typically going to align to that slot guy. If you just imagine that picture in your head, say 6-man box and that nickel, the nickel is typically not involved in the run defense unless that slot receiver blocks him or motions in and blocks, and then the nickel would be pressed into service. So that's typically how Mike was doing it. Now that nickel is now folding into one of the open interior gaps, or sometimes if it's a tight end, he'll just simply play the edge and be the force player, the edge player on that tight end. So essentially, that nickel's in the run fit now, like as a primary fitter. He's no longer help. He's one of the linebackers, essentially. So they've got Buck 80, Devin Witherspoon playing Sam linebacker right now. And he's such an amazing football player. Like, forget about corner. He's just such a football player. He can handle it. So he was inserting into a B gap. They'd be split motion. He'd have to go all the way into the A gap. He'd beat the guard across the face, and he'd get into the backfield. I mean, Devin Witherspoon is, when he's going and activated, he's one of the most incredible football players that will probably ever put on a Seahawks uniform, because I don't know how he does this stuff. Like, I'm just like, okay, like, I guess that's a thing, you know? And I hope we can all like grow to embrace him for that, because there is a role where he is that 5th overall pick. But so there's that element of it. And then there's also just the bear fronts. Like, I'm sorry, but if you got Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams, all one gapping, and that you can assure them single blocks, they're going to eat you alive. And I don't care what offensive line you put out there in the NFL. I'll put those 3 up against anyone if you live in a bear front. Team league-wide defense in bear fronts is really good. Like, even bad teams defend the run well in bear. The issue is that it doesn't let you get your 4-man rush going, because your 4th rusher one of your edges is going to be aligned in a B gap, and that just doesn't give your collective rush good width. That was the issue the Seahawks had in 2021. They could defend the run out of too high that year, but they couldn't have a pass rush. One, they didn't have pass rushers anyway. But in this case, Murphy, Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams are so good that I think they can overcome that alignment disadvantage for pass rush just through their talent. And so now you're talking about finding that midpoint of balance, that optimization between devoting resources to your run defense, and then leaning on your talent advantages to recreate that lost pass rush through all those guys being on the field. So too high is nickel in the fit, so you're gaining a number back, and the bear fronts, and like it allows them, it accentuates their talent advantage. Now we're finally seeing, the whatever millions of dollars they've invested in guy X, the first round pick here, Jaron Reed being a steady veteran, et cetera, right? The second rounders, like they're all just coming alive like they should have from the beginning, really.
So, I mean, Brandon, I want to ask you, can we do what Griff is saying? Like, can we do more of that? Like that's, I mean, whether it's more simplistic, whatever it is, it sounds like a better fit. And I know you and Adam and myself are just like, look, we can't watch more second halves. We're just getting absolutely jellied down our throats because we have no shot at stopping the run. And then lo and behold, when we end up pinching or doing something later, the quarterbacks are going over the top on us anyway. We're not good against defending the pass. We were bad on both sides. So Brandon, if you had to cast a vote, which one are you voting for?
Well, I'm trying to, project this out going forward. Like now that Ernest Jones is on the team, he's been in the system now for 2 weeks. Like, is this, I'm still trying to parse out if this was opponent specific, because maybe there's some familiarity with Ernest Jones now and the Rams and how you might want to defend that particular offense, or if this is a switch that was necessary and that this is just going to be more of what we see going forward.
Well, in fairness, like it's probably both. I mean, probably both are variables at least, right? I do think though that it just goes back to, like, I think who they've got in the front seven, it's not a perfect like roster, but it's still like really good. I think the players are really good. They should be performing closer to this than not moving forward is how I see it. I could see like the option teams, so like with the quarterback run teams, and I can't remember who's on the schedule, maybe Kyler. That's where they can, with the quarterback gets involved, you add another number, you add a gap. Now the running back is a blocker, even if he's not actually blocking someone, his presence on the field adds an extra gap. That might get them, and that's where I want to see again those line movements, those so-called like schematic change-up supplementary calls to aid this structure. But I still think this structure on paper, like if you presented the old mode of doing it versus the week, whatever it was, 8 mode or the week 9 mode of the Rams game, and said which one gives you a better shot, I'm going to say it's the Rams one. I mean, he's pressing the buttons that other coaches press when they are struggling to defend this type of offense. And so it really, like the to project it out, like the formula here is better scheme plus good players plus Mike Macdonald. Like it should project toward a certain direction, at least you would think. So, I like, for at least as run defense goes, I'm going to approach every game with like, they should be okay. They should be okay. I'm no longer like holding on for dear life. So now that said, McVay did find the scheme beaters in the third quarter in the run game. If we remember those toss plays out to the perimeter, he got them on a couple of those, but they went away in the fourth quarter. And Macdonald lived in a slightly different front called an over plus front, where they lived in their regular over front in base, but then they put Leonard Williams in a 6 technique, and he was able to bottle it up. But that meant he had to abandon nickel. So my question will be, how does Macdonald stay in nickel and continue to defend the run out of this? And that, to me, like my mind, I just go fire zone, line slant, send an extra guy off that picture, slant toward the strong side, and that should be your solution. And he's got that stuff. It's just, will he go there? But still, the fact that he was able to adapt mid-game like that, like again, from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, like I feel optimistic, but hopefully that proves warranted, but we'll see.
some really nice green shoots there. And I want to talk about Ernest Jones with you if you can spare some more minutes, because folks are asking about that. But before we get to Ernest Jones and what you're seeing, and is it basically, hey, exactly what we saw with the Rams, and we should re-sign this player? I want to talk about that. But I do want to get this up from Marlon, not to go into the actual O-line failure because it is what it is. But I do want to say, if Witherspoon could come in and play de facto linebacker, what about him at right tackle for a few plays there, Griff? Is that a possibility? Can the 180 man play right tackle just as good as Mike Jarrell at this point?
Yeah, I would be curious to see how he athletically would approach that, because obviously that's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
Like, it's a joke, but I'd actually wonder, like, what would he try to do? Because some of the plays he makes on defense, it's like the modus operandi is figure it out. Because again, he's a $180. The way that he tussles with some of these guys that outweigh him by 100 pounds or more, working around them, it's like he's water, but like electromagnetic. I don't even know what the word is, but I can't he's a very intriguing athlete, just how he works in tight space, and I don't know. So that would be hilarious to watch. It'd be a disaster, but it'd be a fun disaster.
Well, it's already a disaster. It's not a fun one. So
I don't know if we can line him up at center. I bet he can snap better, at least consistently getting it to Geno.
Yeah, like angle guys off or something. It'd be interesting to watch for the experiment of it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we got into electromagnetism and the waves of the universe. I love all that. Yeah. All right, so we got
get out of here, Ram faithful.
But either way, he's saying he played against us. Probably he knows the run fit, yada yada. Please pay him. But others were saying about Ernest.
He's
Jones
saying please pay him as one of our opponents.
No, I understand that. I get it. I put it up there by accident. And but others were saying, hey, pay that man. He's playing really good football. And so from your perspective, is this like, okay, we all know that, Macdonald got that trade with the Ravens. And of course, things seem to click when you bring in one of the best linebackers in the entire world. Now, Ernest Jones is a very good linebacker. I don't think quite on that level, but what do you think going forward? Is that like, yeah, that's just a dude, pay him a market value plus and grow with him? Are you seeing enough from Ernest Jones? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, no, I concur. I agree with you guys. I just off of his body of work in LA, the fact that he was playing good ball for Tennessee, and they obviously run a similar scheme, and how he played after like the getting over the onboarding process of the Bills game, and now that he's full-fledged, he played really well. I mean, I would pay him. Like, he's a key cog moving forward. One of the 4 most important defensive players, just not just because of the talent, but like the middle linebacker position is so important for the scheme. So I'm all in on, rallying around what is he, 25-year-old Ernest Jones, and watching him become one of the leaders of the team for sure.
Yeah, a young man. So, all right, awesome. Brandon, any other questions for Griff, man?
Oh, I think we got to let Griff get out of here. We've taken up enough much time as we said we would.
Yes, and then 10 plus minutes more. So, folks, we've been chatting with Griffin Sturgeon from the Seattle Overload podcast. Of course, he does that with Maddie F. Brown. Griff, tell folks where to find you and where to go listen, because they ought to be diving into your content weekly for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, guys. Yes, Seattle Overload. You can just YouTube that. We are uploading our podcast still to audio sites, but there's been some issues there. So if you don't see us, you can still check us out on YouTube. All of our content is up there as well. I'm on Twitter, see Mike Spin Move, Blue Sky, same @ So yeah, wherever you find that stuff, you can find us. So thanks, guys, for having me on.
Yeah, it was great to get the breakdown and really understand some of those the more details that just I'm not going to know, right? That's why I tap into you guys to get a little more educated around it. So we appreciate it. All right, Brandon, let's say goodbye to Griff. Griff, we'll see you, bud, and we're going to stick around and we're going to go into all right, bud.
Go Hawks, Griff.
And we are going to go into the second half of the show. So again, we said it's not going to be a traditional 3 in 3 out. I don't have my ins and outs ready, but folks, you should know that I took a much needed vacation down there, hung out with my boys, had some fun, clearly went to the wrong bar as we lost in overtime. And then as the week just went on and on and on, I was like, hey, Brandon, I'm not going to be able to get to this. Brandon said, dude, don't worry. Let's just get on there. Let's have a conversation about the game. And I said, well, we still got From the Flock. And Brandon said, we still got From the Flock. So Brandon, anything you want to say about the game before we do get into that section? Couple days removed, things that have now stuck out to you or become more evident with time.
Just that I'm ready to move on from Connor Williams. Like I said, I'd be happy with Devin Witherspoon. Maybe just how can Oluwatimi like not at least get some snaps at the end of that game after we saw more errant snaps from Connor Williams? Like, where is this accountability piece from Mike Macdonald that I heard from fans that I expected as a fan, and I feel like we're not getting it because we're still seeing Connor Williams out there sailing it over Geno's head.
Yeah. And when you have those kind of plays, they are tantamount to another sack or even worse. And when you're giving up, we give up 7 sacks. And then when you compound that with just mistakes with the snap game, it's just, it's amazing we even scored 3 touchdowns. I mean, some of Geno's throws, I know Geno's game was a little wobbly. I understand that. I understand the mistakes were bad. Then you could let it rest a couple of days and go, all right, he actually did get hit in the arm on the bad looking one in the end zone. The other one, Barner's obviously being held out. I wish he just dirts it, throw it at his feet. I wish that
in both instances, you come away with a field goal on either of those drives. Or Jason Myers just hits his extra point like he should.
Yeah, the extra point, that would be cool too. And with all that, and then adding on other major negative plays, it's just you can't absorb that much negative. And we almost did again. We're in my estimation, we are a 1-yard conversion on either 3rd down or 4th down in overtime. I think if we make that 1st down, we win that game. I think JSN's getting another touchdown, or they find a lock, or they're, he's finding.
And that's why that game's so frustrating, is because you can look at all those different points because it was so close and say you should have had that game, and you didn't have it.
Yeah, one thing that I think is interesting that I saw a debate about and still was going forward on 4th down. I don't know about you. I mean, yes, I was a little bit deep into to some drinks. With that, I was right away like, for me, it was like, you got to go. You got to try. And then, your defense is playing good. So just go get a stop. I know it's hard. I know they could kick a field goal, but your defense has been the better half of the team by far, because it was a pick 6. Just let it be. My challenge there was 3rd down, 4th down, basically being identical. Just we're going to try and jam it up the gut. It's like, 3rd down, I'm sitting there next to 4 of my different dudes I grew up with. I'm like, play action, pull the ball down, boot Geno. Just get him on the edge. If he could go get a half yard, awesome. If he's got a levels thing and Barner's open, awesome. But pull it down, like fool them. And even 4th down, if you're going to go for it, have some balls. Pull it down with Geno on a boot. And that disappointed the crap out of me, that it was just 2 in a row, very, very similar, and with similar results. Brandon, don't know did you want the field goal? Did you want variety? Obviously wanted a 1st down, but what were you thinking in that moment?
There's a couple things that I'm thinking with regard to that. One, I think it's a little bit funny that Mike says that this is the team that we want to be. Well, if this is the power running team that you want to be, then why do you wait to break that out until later? Why are we not lining up under center more often and taking the high snaps out of the hands of Connor Williams anyway? They only ran under center. This is something that Adam and I are going to talk about in the flagship show that's coming out on Saturday. They're just in this game, and I get back into the stats of previous matchups between the Seahawks and the opponents. There were a total of 46 snaps between both teams where the quarterback was under center. Do you want to wager to guess how many of those 46 belong to our Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, I'll wager a guess. I'm going to say 9.
You're close. It was single digits. It was 40 for the Rams to 6 for our Seahawks.
Oh, God. 6.
And so what? 2 of those were those running plays in the
right.
fourth
When in
quarter.
the most obvious situation. Right. Exactly. To just bolstering your point.
So,
right. Like, okay.
If I'm the Rams defense, I wonder now that they're lining up under center for just the 5th and 6th time all game, I wonder if this is going to be a run play.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did.
And that's exactly why I was saying, like, screaming to my boys right next to him. I'm like, rip it down, do a boot, get Geno on the move. Like, because you could see, it's just like they were defending it as if it was goal line. Cause in many ways it was the same thing.
Sure.
It's like, dude, they got like 9 dudes in the box. Like, Geno's got legs, like just
the other aspect to that though, too. Now, Adam has said this and now you've said this then, and I believed it too. Our defense was playing well. With the way that the new overtime rules are, if you believe in your defense, why not send your defense out first?
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's simply because you, as you know, like
you want to score the touchdown. You don't want to lose on a touchdown on the first drive.
Yeah, you just have a chance that you do the thing to yourself, but you just never touch the ball, right? So, and the Seahawks were the team that had offensive momentum going into overtime, also, right? So there was that. Like Geno got hot, made some amazing throws. So I would always want them to take the ball personally. I understand that, but
touchdown.
Take the ball, take the ball and score. Right. And, one thing real quick too, I want to talk about is, I think maybe it was the first, maybe it was the second. I forget which one, but one of the JSN touchdowns where he's wide open in the middle of the end zone, but the throw that Geno makes with the arm angle where he's like basically stepping to his left, about to get crushed, and he's got this like little Laredo 3/4 thing going, and he still whips the ball like 35 freaking yards down the field, like in stride to JSN. I was like, man, I still think there's so few quarterbacks that can actually do those things. And again, I know the game was kind of wobbly, but boy, Brandon, some of those throws from Geno, it's a ton of hero ball, a ton of it. It's just like, can we give the dude a little bit of balance? And can we 20-something rushes, 80-something yards from K9. I don't care. The average isn't great. The commitment to run was there. Love to see it more under center. That'd be cool. But then, my word, can we give Geno a little bit of time? So like every ball he's trying to do is not, him fitting it into a tiny little window under duress. It's insane that he's even making some of these throws, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. And getting under center more is going to open up some of those windows, especially intermediate windows. It's going to, and I don't see any reason why they can't run from under center more, unless it's just, there's not that many plays in the Grub playbook that are under center, having come from the college game and running that type of offense.
Yeah, for sure. And we got a couple of folks commenting. Our executive live producer, this is back to saying, because you believe your offense is going to score, right? So take the ball. And then we got El Nino saying, hey, look, DK not being there slows up everything. To an extent, it does, but you could see a pretty, just in the same way Griff was talking about, hey, they pivoted rather quickly from week 8 to week 9. And I thought that was a really cool breakdown for Griff to, besides the detail, just being like, hey, schematically, to abandon your stripes and then go for it in a very, very different way deserves some kudos. And then coaching it well and executing it well is a part 2 and part 3 that also fell into place. But to bring it back to DK, yeah, I hear you, El Nino. And I realize, DK is our ex and he's the alpha. I get all that. But you could see pretty rapidly, with a little bit of time and a little more practice, and with some different talent on the field as well, that wasn't playing the game previous, right? That the passing game looked pretty good. When they had a little bit of time, I don't know, Geno.
Yeah. Well, because they're using JSN in the way that I think we were waiting to see. It's not just bubbles and these short throws against linebackers. It's they were actually using as a real wide receiver, and
100%. Yeah.
Why we waited that long to break that out, I don't know. Especially when DK was out the previous week.
And did you and Adam talk a little bit about? I did watch the post game, but again, I was definitely, 3 sheets to the wind. But did you guys talk a little bit about Cody White and his game and his impact? Because he looked good, and all of a sudden it was like he's in there, and he was a nice compliment. And it might be a 1-week wonder. It might just be something that you don't know if it's sustainable or not, but he had a role to play in this game, and he actually looked really good, made some clutch plays.
Yeah, that was nice to see. I want to get to the comment here by Marlon because I want to tease the next episode a little bit more too between Adam and I. Marlon, I know what you're saying here, and the comment here is the line can't hold up to being under center. It takes an extra second to turn around. Geno doesn't have that time. Tune in to the next flagship show, Marlon, and we will explain why that's a little bit of a myth. I know it's a big concern because I had that concern too. And based on one of the interviews that we heard this week from Mark Schlereth on 710 Seattle Sports, based on some of the other things that we talk about just with that regard, we're going to get into that too. So stay tuned for that.
That's going to be great. And make sure that you are subscribing to, our YouTube channel, which you see on screen here, youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. And if you're watching live right now, please drop the comments, hit the likes. It really does. Look, the algorithm is legit. It really does drive it for us. So please do that.
I kind of wish that we would have kept Griff around for that comment too, because I want to see if he would have had a similar take as Adam on that one. But
yeah, well, we could always do a part 2 maybe with Griff because he clearly no problem. 30 seconds before we get on, he hops in. How you doing, guys? And then blammo, he's right into it, right? So didn't miss a beat. So good job by Griff. All right, so what do you say? What do you say we get over to our Discord, and maybe Brandon, before we do that, so we can look at the ins and outs that were put in by our flockers. Maybe you can remind folks, like, how could they join the fun reindeer games, become a member of the Discord, and contribute and just raise the hawker, Brandon.
Yeah, you can go to getintheflock.com. $3 and above gets you into our Discord group where we chat on game day, and it's a fun time. And so you can go to getintheflock.com, and yeah, we're going to read off some of the ins, some of the outs. I know we have some people in chat too. So if you also want to share your ins and outs, then we can get to it here as well.
Awesome. So we'll start off with Car. And she says, despite no points, that is a good first drive. And again, it was a good first drive. She also says, is that a 3 and out? I mean, we had a lot. What the defense would be
7 3 and
outs, right? Yeah. So, and gave up 13 points, by or 14 points by the defense. And of course the pick 6 or 13, man, like the defense played really well. We had a lot of 3 and outs, and we started the game with 3 and outs. And then the really cool part is that when we needed them, when we had to give ourselves opportunities to get back in the game, we got like 3 more in a row in like the third into the fourth quarter. That was super impressive. So hopefully that continues as you got to take on the rest of the NFC West coming out of the bye.
We've got Amy in the Discord, who was also here in chat earlier. With the 2 fumbles in 1 drive, and the D turns it around for a stop and an in for no political ads next week. That's a huge one.
Yes, we are into that. Yeah, we are into that next week. It is over. And I won't miss those ads either. All right. So we got Marcus, no relation, McVeigh. He says, Leonard Williams pulling up and not drawing a flag for roughing the passer. I know there were some moments in this game that were just, and I remember Adam talking about it post game, be like, I'm not going to blame the refs, but there were some pretty dreadful calls also. But Leo understanding, how to make it happen. And then the Sky Judge helping us out, or at least making things right a few times. The Kobe Bryant hit comes back to my memory about that one. Nice to see players understand like that. The NFL is super, super over rotated on protecting, especially the quarterback in this moment. Man, I hope it really I'm not saying it's got to go back to 1980 style where you could just murder ball the QB. Nobody wants that. But I do really hope it does tweak back a little bit to be like, look, you're in, as long as you're not hitting the dude in the head and it's in motion when he's throwing the ball, who cares if you land on him heavy? It's like, you're a 300-pound guy. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, and there is a little bit of a difference of really trying to body
Yes.
smash a dude into a pancake versus just landing on him with your
Yes.
normal amount of weight. And that it does
Momentum.
make it tough on officials to try and have to make that decision. But also, I think the main thing is the consistency among refs. Like, you have to treat Patrick Mahomes as if he's Sam Darnold.
Yeah. Yeah. He's exactly. And of course, every single Chiefs game at this point, you can just go up and down Twitter and see like that they do get a call or two per game. And, some would say, well, so did Michael Jordan. And then you could just say, well, you know what? He earned those calls, but yeah, I hear you. But
every quarterback wants to be that, though, because you saw Matt Stafford out there whining about wanting multiple calls throughout the game, too.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
All right. And in from Frost to JSN's TD was a beautiful design, called at the perfect time for us to take a 2-score lead into the half.
Yeah, and another half call here. B-Wags Bicep saying the last 2 minutes of the first half are my favorite minutes forever or in forever. Whatever reason, our Seahawks have been really good at the ends of halves. Like really, really, really good. Ballsy, like a lump in your throat. But man, it's been very effective. So it's been fun.
One thing that I want to go and look at is, do we see fewer of those plays where they're looking to the sideline then in those final moments of the
that's
quarters?
Interesting. That's interesting. It's just like, because there's not enough time to do that, right? It's just maybe there's a sequence already baked in, or
maybe we need to let Geno cook.
That's it. Just let Geno cook, right? There was that one game back in the preseason where Russ was the OC, whatever year that was, right? And he, I don't know, threw 3 touchdowns in the preseason. They're like, just let Russ do it. So maybe. I mean, hey, look, 4 and 5, we got to win 1 out of the last 5. We got to win a few games, man. So
Marlon in the chat, Sky Judge to pick up the flag, also XFL Challenge View. We did get the benefit, I think, of Sky Judge on a couple occasions in this game. And I thought we would not get the benefit on one of the pass interference calls. But they still allowed that to go ahead, didn't they?
Yeah, that one. I remember one that looked a little handsy is my recollection of it, for sure.
There was one where we got the benefit because our dude got stepped on or we stepped. Yeah. How did that work?
Yeah, there was a small, right. They ended up calling, I think it was against White, and they called it pass interference. And it was
he got stepped on.
Yeah, it was just tangled feet, for sure. I'll keep it rocking here. We got Jay in Alaska says the route Chenault ran on JSN's touchdown, that is what made him wide open. I don't remember that specifically. And Brandon, I'm not sure if you could recall how Chenault sprung them, but I'll go back and rewatch that. It's a pretty cool take.
B-Wags Biceps giving the out to the announcers, drooling over Jared Verse every chance they get.
Well, he was good.
He had a good game.
He was really good, right? And it's Fisk or Frisk, and they were annoying. I know we don't have a talented offensive line, but they got 7 sacks. We got 0. That's it. 7-0. Disgusting. All right. The spy who spooned me says, in Jones's gap discipline, Mike finally has a competent linebacker to let loose in his scheme. And then pairing that with what we talked about in the first half of the show, it's not even Mike's scheme. So something borrowed, something blue, right? But hey, if it ain't broke and that seam not broke, let's not fix it. Do it again, Mike, please.
Frost with the in. Cody White, pick any play. I picked the pump block.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. Yeah. Cody White was all over the map, man. Really, really, really fun. So, all right, Josh DeHuman out. Red zone interceptions can't win that way. And says out. Fisk holding AJ Barner on that interception where it's a little screen to the tight end. I wish that. I mean, yes, it happened. Could have been, should have been called. I also wish with all that traffic that Geno just puts it at his feet, live to play another day type thing, and recognize.
He was looking at the back of Barner's jersey. Like
exactly.
The dude needs to be turned around.
For sure. And one thing that, Josh is talking about here too, like the red zone interceptions. Yes, those are horrible results in the red zone, like the worst you could possibly have in the red zone. But our red zone offense, when we're like 5 yards and in, it's dreadful. It's so bad. And this is not this game. this has just been all season where it's like, we're doing like fade routes in one game to the corners. It's like, okay, low probability there.
Mhm.
We can't run up the gut, and then we're not ingenuitive, and I don't know why. When we don't do a lot of things with like little motions, little pop passes, like little slants, just quick things. And when we do rub routes, we get called for PI when they're not even PI. But the rest of the league could go bench press a guy with one of the wide receivers and clear out a nickel, and they don't get called. So it's just that 5 yard and in is such a. It's like, for me, Brandon, I have very little confidence when we get down there. I'd rather us be like, get to the 5, take a holding penalty, and get to the 15. It's like Geno could operate better there. I just feel like most of our touchdowns through the air, especially, come from that range and not from the 5 yard line. I get that it gets more condensed, but I just feel like we get less creative down there too, and it's not working, dude.
You don't even need to be creative. You just run your best play, which is where K9 looks like he's intending to run up the gut, and then he stops when everybody crashes in and there are no holes, and then he bounces it outside and beats everybody to the end zone.
Yeah, run the K9 scribble. I like that. Exactly.
That's all you have to do. It's our best run play.
By far, too.
All right. We've got an out to Geno in his worst game of the season. 3 interception day. Do you want to guess on the last time Geno Smith had a 3 interception day in his NFL career?
I feel like there's a hint there. I'm going to say the Giants game where he replaced Eli.
2014, his second year with the Jets.
Wow.
Brock Purdy had a 3 interception game just a couple weeks ago. Geno and Brock Purdy was 13 years old last time that Geno had a 3 interception game.
Okay, so they just to play the logic forward. Hey, Purdy, take a decade off. We'll see you in about a decade, and you could have a comeback trail. But take some time off and just and put it. Who's their backup? They have like a weird backup now, don't they?
Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, let's play him. Yeah, him. I like that. I like him better than Purdy.
All right. Jay on Alaska also giving the out to Reek for giving the wide receiver a free release off the line on the game-winning touchdown. That was a crazy catch, too, despite having the free release and getting beat.
It's a beautiful pass. He gets beat, but he catches up. He's there.
He catches it with one hand.
I'm saying, and Reek catches up with it.
Oh, yeah.
It really reminded me. Well, let me ask you. Did it remind you of a famous play in Seahawks history?
No, it didn't.
No, it felt, for many reasons, overtime, walk-off, and the distance, it felt like the Jermaine Kearse touchdown versus the Packers, the walk-off of the NFC Championship game. Just super tight coverage, perfect friggin' ball, and then, it comes down with a one-hander. It's just like, daggers. All right, I'm moving on.
Remind me of that at all. That Packers play will not be spoiled.
Well, no, we don't got to spoil it. We just recognize a nice play. All right,
take it back.
I fully take it back. Okay. All right, going to go with JSN Jiggy with it. At least it feels like this defense today can hang with a McVay offense, and she's totally right with that. That's Lisa. She says, out for the love of God, don't throw those balls, Geno. So there's a lot of Geno, which I understand right after the game in the moment. And those are balls he can't throw. But to the positive, and we had Griff on that first half. Like, defense looks really good, man. It's still a tight division too, Brandon. It's like, okay, whatever happens this weekend, maybe we're still like a game back heading into next week. I'm not giving up hope yet. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm not giving up hope, but also being 0-2 in the division, going into the next 2 division games.
Well, 2-2 then. There you
go. Exactly. Nothing to worry about then.
0 to worry about.
Good to go.
All right, we got a few more here. We'll go with Flocktimus Prime. He says, out Grubb's inability to scheme our pass catchers open. I don't disagree. Like, JSM was open, but everything else was like, they were like super tight windows. Out Geno's aversion to throwing the ball away. We talked about that, and I agree. And then out, how bad must Olu be to not warrant a start at center instead of the guy who's, he's saying messed up snaps for at least, a couple games in a row. So Flocktimus, Keith, he goes 3 for 3 there as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, Brandon, those are 3 outs.
We used them all up. So I guess now we go to Hawk Van Dyke. All the outs are obvious. All the ins are overshadowed by another infuriating loss to the Lambs. I expected the season would go like this, but I still don't like it. Go Hawks from Hawk Van Dyke.
Well, at least he finished strong with the Go Hawks. He's not wrong. And again, I think, look, we have a relaxing bye week. So let's take that breath. Let's enjoy some football, get outside, do other things. And what do we got this week? What is very quickly, who do our opponents or our rivals even play? I've been fully checked out with some other life stuff this week.
Yeah, we got Rams Dolphins on Monday night, which has got to be Adam's favorite game ever to watch.
That's funny. Yeah. Funny.
And then we've got the Arizona Cardinals at home against the Jets, who are favored against the Cardinals.
Okay. I saw that. Yeah. They're giving like 1.5. Well, I'll
Niners going to Tampa.
And Niners at Tampa. Okay. Well, Tampa could play. Tampa's an up and down team, but they can hang.
Short week for Tampa coming off the Chiefs.
Not great. Don't love any of that. Thank you. That's terrible. But and a really, it's a gut punch loss to the Chiefs too. Oh yeah. Okay. I hate that. But maybe they'd bounce back and play a good game. The Jets maybe are getting hot / better and finding themselves a little bit. I am shocked that the Cardinals go to 5-4, and at the end, and that Vegas still says they're a 1.5 point underdog at home to what is a 2-5 or 2-3-5 team with the Jets, right? So that's got to be a bit of a chip on the shoulder. Well, I don't know. Hopefully, Brandon. I mean, I'm not sure we'll get an 0 for 3, but that sure would be nice if our rivals could just get a goose egg for us while we sit back and catch our breath.
We need that after we had our worst week with the Seahawks being the only team that lost in the division and everybody else getting the win. So now we need to flip-flop. We get the bye week victory of all of our rivals losing.
Yeah, well, I think with that, Brandon, I think it was really fun to have Griff on. I hope folks enjoyed this different 3 in 3 out, not the traditional one. So we bring in the X's and O's guy. But I promise, my promise to everybody else is after the bye week and we get back to our regular games, I will absolutely be back with the traditional 3-I, 3-0. And Brandon, I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to say to the universe and say that the multiverse, it's going to be a 3 in 3 out that includes a Brandan, that includes an MVC, and includes a long ledger from the flock with tons of ins, because I don't think we're dead yet. I think this team's got fight. I think we're going to see it coming out of the bye.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.